I'm sure that everyone who is a cartoon fan is aware of the massive TV show called Spongebob SquarePants. No? You know, the adventures and fun times of an anthropomorphic sea sponge and his underwater pals. Well, for me, I'm all too familiar with the show, as I grew up with the show ever since it first started airing right as the 90s were coming to their conclusion. The show had such an expansive history over its 20 plus years airing on television, with stupendous highs like Band Geeks and Chocolate with Nuts, to outrageous lows like Boating Buddies and One Course Meal. These episodes in particular were all the rave online, with critics and other fans of the show coming together to totally assassinate it and point out the serious number of flaws. Not gonna lie, I stopped watching this show before season 7 aired due to one particular episode. This episode has kind of flown under the radar in comparison to episodes like House Fancy or Splinter. I later discovered why that was. The version of this episode I watched was not the widely distributed one. I have no idea how this version of the episode came to be, nor do I really want to know how it happened. All I can say now is how I acquired this particular version of the episode. I was active on forums at the time when 4chan and Something Awful were in their prime. The year was 2009! And I was still a massive Spongebob fan despite all of the terrible episodes that were released. I was in the forum chat with some other people discussing our experiences with the show, how we found the show, our favorite characters, etc., etc. However, there was one thing a particular user said that caught all of our attention immediately. Do you want to see an unreleased episode of SpongeBob that will be released sometime next month? Obviously, we were skeptical of this user. This had massive computer virus written all over it. Curiosity welled within me, however. If this was legitimate, I could spoil this for my family viewers. So I downloaded some antivirus software like Avast and continued messaging this user. I was an animator on SpongeBob, hired to help things out when Steven Hillenburg had chosen to leave the show after the movie. This user began. I mainly contributed to Season 5 and the Season 6 episodes. This particular episode was cut due to being deemed too dark for kids to watch, and the official episode that will be released will be drastically lighter in tone. The user continued. I helped animate this particular episode before it was written. I really enjoyed one part of the episode before the greedy snakes fired me. The actors of kids these days are as fragile as glass. Whatever happened to the days like Ren and Stimpy and Rocco's Modern Life? All those pussies couldn't handle a clown at a damn carnival. The user ranted. It appeared he had gotten into some kind of conflict or bitter moment with the company as he went down on a total tirade about how shitty the business was and how they all cared about safe, distributable nonsense for the kids to gobble up while the parents lit up cigars wishing they were robbers. The episode was secret for a variety of reasons. Those corporate slaves would never want this episode to be made public, the person explained. All I will say is that me and some others had a really fun time animating this. Enjoy it. I'm sure it'll be an episode you will never forget. The user ended before he sent me the link to the video and went offline. This was all he offered to me in terms of general, concrete information behind the scenes. The episode he had apparently acquired was entitled Pineapple Fever. Sorry. I'm sorry. I thought it was an odd name, to be honest. So I proceeded to download it to my computer. It was an empty MP4 file, so it definitely did contain a video of some kind. Loading up my video playing software, I placed the MP4 folder in and waited for it to start. I was fairly certain it would be a massive screamer or some kind of video to mess with me, but a shed of hope secretly wished it was real. The file had finished loading, and to my surprise, it was an actual SpongeBob SquarePants episode that was playing. It began with the iconic and well-beloved intro to SpongeBob SquarePants, with the pirate portrait singing the song as usual. It concluded with the porous yellow sponge playing his nose like a flute. I'm sorry. The title card itself was typical of a SpongeBob episode with nothing too out of the ordinary. It was just a photo of SpongeBob's pineapple house, except it had a rusted chain secured tightly around it with a padlock ensuring it was locked. Above it read the title, Pineapple Fever. I thought this was maybe an episode where Patrick and maybe SpongeBob locked themselves in within the house, and the story would be them trying to escape. And when the episode finally began, it seemed my theory was being proved correct. It began with both SpongeBob and Patrick sitting on his sofa, watching television. Patrick was messily eating some peanut butter and chocolate. His floral green shorts were now stained with peanut butter and chocolate. SpongeBob was just sitting peacefully, minding his own business. It appeared that the two were watching some kind of special episode of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy.
Oh boy, Patrick, this is the best part. Turn it up,
SpongeBob excitedly said to his sea star friend as he moved in place.
Sure thing, SpongeBob,
Patrick responded as he comedically pulled out a large speaker out of nowhere and hit the button to turn the thing on. I was kinda shocked. The voices sound almost exactly like the normal voice actors. However, I could not tell if they were not the original actors. Squidward's voice was a little bit scratchier than usual, but I digress. The voice from the speaker was amplified at an almost cringe-inducing level. But, of course, both SpongeBob and Patrick are oblivious to this, as the two began cheering as Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy took down Man Ray. The camera then zoomed out to showcase Squidward, their grumpy next-door neighbor, sitting down on his sofa watching the news. He was supposed to be watching a new episode of his fancy show, but it got interrupted by a breaking news message. Squidward sighed at this, but simply continued watching.
Breaking news! The news anchorfish began. Bikini Bottom is experiencing all matters of a storm. This includes high rain.
The fishes in the background then got drenched by water.
Intense and strong winds.
A nearby fish's newspaper stand then got blown up and was carried away.
And lastly, lightning.
The news anchor fish concluded before he was immediately struck by lightning.
The Robin's been struck by lightning.
Oh my god, I sound like a complete dumbass. I won't drag this on, however. I'm sure that you all of you here have seen the original episode of Pineapple Fever. That is, as it's been over a decade since it was officially released, as of me writing this down. And this modified episode is mostly the same episode as the original. So I will only continue with the things that are notably different from the original episode. Instead of it being shown that the trio had been locked in SpongeBob's house for just one afternoon, we were instead treated to one of those show's signature title cards, with the French narrator saying, "A few weeks later." Even without this title card, it was very clear that several weeks had passed since the storm had begun, as the time was clearly showcased within SpongeBob's pineapple residence. The walls of the abode were rotten in a sickly shade of orange. There were distinct scent lines throughout the building, indicating it reeked of a full foul odor. Furniture was tossed around and smashed throughout the many rooms of the pineapple. Shattered glass and plates were littering the decrepit, destroyed kitchen. The fridge's door was ripped clean off. All things resembling potential nourishment and hydration were picked clean. But the worst parts of these were sure the characters. Squidward huddled in a corner, eyes wide and bloodshot. He was skinny and frail looking. His entire body was slouched against a wall while he was breathing heavily. His brown shirt was crumpled and torn in certain spots. Chunks of the fabric have been removed. His tentacles bruised, and one was even a gross-looking shade of purple. He looked absolutely miserable. Even when Squidward was at his absolute worst, he never looked like this at all. He looked as if he was attacked by some kind of wild animal. SpongeBob was humming to himself while sitting in his armchair. His smart attire was practically in shambles. His sleeves were torn and his tie was missing in its entirety. His white shirt was stained with who knows what, while his shoes had giant holes in them, exposing his feet. He looked just as tired as Squidward was. Frail and weak the sponge appeared to be. Dry blood and tears were around his mouth. Upon the camera scrolling down, it showcased where the blood came from. The cracked and busted open shell of SpongeBob's beloved pet snail, Gary, was visible from his lap. It was obvious SpongeBob had killed and cannibalized his loyal pet. The tears were most likely from guilt that SpongeBob was feeling over being forced to eat his friend. My mouth became agape at what I was seeing. I wasn't going to cry or never watch SpongeBob ever again like you would think, but I was just in shock at the animation. It looked professionally done. The blood was drawn so perfectly that it fit into SpongeBob's universe almost seamlessly. The blood was obviously cartoony, but it was also detailed. I was just thinking to myself, why the fuck would someone animate this? I get holding a grudge against the company and all, but what if a little kid stumbled across this episode online? That would be one ruined childhood for sure. However, the worst one was definitely Patrick. His floral patterned trunks were stained so much that the patterns on the trunks were not even visible anymore. His mouth was stained with all kinds of things that I couldn't even decipher. He had an extended belly. No doubt Patrick had been a drain on their seriously dwindling food supplies. He was laughing to himself, coiled into a ball in the corner of the room. No doubt, all of them were slowly going insane, and it was inevitable that conflict would happen at some point in time. And turns out, that's exactly what happened. It cut away from the overweight sea star and back to SpongeBob, who was weakly pulling himself up to his feet. The sponge then proceeded upstairs into his room and sat down quietly on the disheveled bed while eyeing his now smashed foghorn alarm clock. He stared out of the broken porthole window, clearly seeing if the storm had dissipated, which to the sponge sadness had not disappeared. He sighed forlornly and trekked down the stairs to the kitchen area where the others were situated. He then heard a loud, rumbling sound that indicated someone was hungry. It pawed over to show that Patrick was the cause of this. He spoke out in a tired and lazy voice.
Squidward, where is all the food?
Patrick, you ate it all!
Squidward snapped back. In truth, he was tired of dealing with this fat oaf of a sea star. Throughout his life, he had done nothing but harassed, bullied, hurt, beat, and tortured him. He was not in the mood to be dealing with him.
Squidward, you had the last packet of snail food. It was clearly you who was hogging it all.
Patrick responded back in an offended tone, while the camera panned to showcase his extended belly. The starkly contrasted between SpongeBob and Squidward, who were frail and malnourished. This, however, was the tipping point. Decades of misery, crushed dreams, and pain, all bottled up within the octopus's mind. He had held back everything in some feeble attempt to try and get through to SpongeBob and Patrick. One statement was like the floodgates of hell opening.
Squidward screamed in the most anger-filled way that I had ever seen a cartoon character scream. His face was red with pulsating veins all over, indicating the octopuses had finally had enough. He jumped forward and seized Patrick by the throat, pinning the gluttonous pink starfish to the wall with extreme force. Patrick instantly began gagging and choking in response. He flailed his chubby pink arms in an attempt to try and break free from his grip. Squidward held him firm and even began slapping the sea star rapidly, more and more, until he was dying and more and more. SpongeBob's eyes became wide at this, and he immediately began trying to pull Squidward off Patrick. Eventually, Patrick broke free by biting down hard on Squidward's hand, causing the octopus to yell and drop it.
Squidward, stop it! Patrick didn't eat it all! We all had some!
SpongeBob yelled out to try and stop the octopus from hurting Patrick anymore.
Oh, SpongeBob, you clearly had more than me. You could yell while I could barely lift a spoon, Patrick said ungratefully as he held a spoon weakly before dropping it with exaggeration.
I ate more, Patrick. Look at you. You're tubby.
SpongeBob yelled while pointing at Patrick's stomach. The hunger had finally gotten to SpongeBob. The nice fry cook with the heart of gold was gone. In his place was a desperate being, craving food and no sense of friendship. He realized that in a split second that Patrick was always to blame for their food situation. He had eaten all of SpongeBob's frozen food in one swoop instead of rationing it like he and Squidward did. He really was a fat, bumbling idiot. Patrick growled loudly in pure rage. No one calls me Chubby! Patrick bellowed as he pounced onto SpongeBob. Patrick began biting down hard into SpongeBob's arm. There was no blood that came from his wound, but rather yellow chunks flew onto the floor. SpongeBob fought back by kicking him hard, causing the starfish to fall back and bang his head into a nearby shelf. Squidward simply backed away into a corner, afraid for his life at the deterioration of SpongeBob and Patrick's mental state. SpongeBob ran to the kitchen and took out a knife. He held it close as his eye began twitching over and over. Patrick had taken a far more primitive approach. He broke off one of the legs at a nearby table and held it like a sword, with the sharp edge of it pointing away. SpongeBob walked slowly around the messed up pineapple. So many beautiful memories were born in this place. And to see it all broken as it was had finally caused the lovable sponge to snap. Patrick eventually caught sight of SpongeBob in the kitchen. He immediately began making a dash towards SpongeBob. The extra food and the starfish contributed to his speed in the matter. SpongeBob turned around and saw Patrick flying in the air towards him as Patrick had jumped fly high into the air. A loud slash sound was heard. Then, silence. Squidward finally stopped trembling in the corner as he noticed the lack of volume in the decrepit, decaying pineapple. He rounded the corner into the kitchen, the camera then zoomed into his face. All anger was gone from his face. Instead, an expression of pure shock and sadness was planted in replacement. Patrick was unmoving on top of SpongeBob. A kitchen knife was planted deep within his head. There was obviously no blood with Patrick, but rather the knife was just stuck, blocking any kinds of bodily fluids from exiting via the hole. SpongeBob, however, wasn't unmoving. He was groaning in pain. Patrick had caught him in the chest. His legs were crushed due to Patrick's enormous weight and because of SpongeBob's malnourishment. Squidward then finally came back to Earth as he tried to pull Patrick's body from SpongeBob's. After a good 30 seconds, Squidward was successful, as Patrick's form lay lifeless and on its side. Squidward had his arm wrapped around SpongeBob's shoulder as a way of supporting him as he attempted to get the fry cook back to his feet. But inevitably, a loud crack sounded as SpongeBob dropped to the floor, his legs useless and damaged beyond repair. He could barely move. His breathing was slowly faltering. His eyes were barely open. His time was almost up. Squidward was too in shock to speak. He tried uttering something in the form of an apology, but SpongeBob weakly reached his hand up and shushed him. It was clear to Squidward at the moment. SpongeBob was never this annoying, absorbent bother that he thought he knew. He truly was a pure and nice bikini bottomite. Eventually, SpongeBob closed his eyes, arms falling limp, and breathed no more. SpongeBob SquarePants was gone. Squidward began sobbing hard as he tried shaking SpongeBob in an attempt to get him to respond, but the sponge's body remained still. Squidward lay down beside the two bodies, curled into the fetal position, and cried and cried and cried. The episode ended with a slow zoom out, as Squidward's cry grew more sadder and quieter, before the episode faded to black. I closed down the video link and just remained motionless in my chair. I wasn't freaked out, nor would I ever browse the internet again, but I was just shocked. What the hell did I just watch? Well, whatever messed up shit I just watched, one thing was for certain. The creator was right on the money when it came to this episode. It has now been a few years since this individual contacted me. He vanished shortly after sending me the link. The working theory was that he probably got into trouble with Viacom. But we will never know for sure. I've always had a fascination with episodes that were canceled or were altered before their release. I wanted an episode that was like no other. And I got it. I guess what they say is true. Be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. But if you get it, you might not get it the way you want it. Sweet dreams. And so we've reached the end of the alternate version of the SpongeBob episode, Pineapple Fever. This creepypasta was made by the Dark Author, and this is the second creepypasta I've read from him. And let me just say, this is a massive improvement over Karma Crab, which was the other SpongeBob creepypasta I've read from this guy. Also, sorry for the background chatter. My brother and mother are talking about sauces. Okay. But I'm gonna make this a little brief. Yeah, this story is actually pretty nice. I loved every single second, a single line of it. The creepy factor is top notch. The part where, like, SpongeBob cannibalized Gary, that was, like, damn, that shit got real. Oh my god. And yeah, the blood and guts and stuff, it's used to a fair amount, not like too much like most creepypastas. Yeah, I really love the atmosphere with this one. It's like bleak, dark, sad at the end when Squidward is trying to bring SpongeBob back to life, which is really wow. I really love this story. And again, I probably didn't do the story justice with my narration of it, but you know, it's worth a read. I really recommend it. Um, I wish I may link the original creepypasta reading by the Dark Author himself, and maybe if I'm allowed permission from him, I could maybe like post a document of the story so that you can form your own opinion on it. And also about it, there are some grammatical errors, but not like too much. It's not like maybe I think I only spotted maybe like 2 grammatical errors or something. I don't know. I mean, then again, I probably do worse in essays, but yeah, just take my word for it. Yeah, but those are only 2 grammatical errors. It's not enough to like make the story awful. And yeah, it's a pretty good story. Uh, Overall, gives a really creepy atmosphere. It provides comedy when it needs it the most, like the part where the lightning is actually kind of made me laugh a little bit. I kind of made a fool of myself trying to reenact the bikini bottom announcer guy. But you know, yeah. So yeah, So the story, I give it a 10 out of 10. The grammar, I'd give it a 9 out of 10, maybe. The horror elements, I give like a obvious 10 out of 10, and the yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I hope I'm not. I think I'm forgetting something, but those are the overall important 3 scores, I think. So, what is my final rating on this particular story? Let's see. Wait. 10 plus 10 is 29. Wait. Give me a moment. Give me a moment. All right. Oh my God. 29 divided by 3. Yeah, I give this one a 9.7 out of 10. It's a really good creepypasta. I recommend it to you. It may not be your cup of tea, but it's definitely my cup of joe. And also, and like again, I think the average for me is 5 out of 10, not 7 out of 10. I'm not. What do I look like? The American grading system. But okay, I think I'm dragging this video a little too long. This review kind of sounds kind of shit. But yeah, yeah, 9.7 out of 10. Recommend it a lot. But you know, this is all just opinionated. Please do not attack me if you disagree with me, because as the funny Shadow Man once said, we're all entitled to our own opinions in regards to these creepypastas and stories. So put down in the comments below and be civil on what you think of this creepypasta. Alright. I need to go now. I gotta eat lunch. I'm starving right now. And yeah, and to the Dark Author, you did really well with this one. Like the last story was great, but the added creepy factor, chef's kiss, chef's kiss, yes. Yeah, so just keep doing what you do, and yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you gamers on the other side. Peace, bro. Peace, player. Okay, bye.